Welcome to the party. I'm not here right now, but I want you to listen very carefully. These guys are very funny, so pay attention. Enough talk. It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Bags of Actions. My name's Steve, my co-host is Pete.
Hello.
This episode we are talking about the 1990 film Die Hard 2, which is just called Die Hard 2.
Die Harder. No, it's Die Harder.
Was that the strap line? Die Harder.
It's got the Die Harder bit on the end.
Okay, because the third one was Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Yes.
And then it just got, I'm really want to die hard after that, I think.
Yeah.
And then please kill me, Die Hard. Anyway, we're talking about Die Hard 2. It's been a while since I've seen this Christmas movie, but I thought I should, dig it out, have a look.
I think I'm surprised how soon after the first one it was. I'd forgotten. I thought there was a bigger gap. I mean,
right.
As they go on, I think the gap gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But I didn't realise it's literally only 2 years after the first one. One of the writers is back. The main cast is back, apart from those who died.
Yep.
I think we can spoil Die Hard. Goodness me.
Yeah. We're going to be some spoilers in this anyway, so spoilers.
So yeah, it was. And I think I might have seen this back in the day. I probably saw this more than Die Hard because shocking confession, the first time I saw Die Hard was on television. So with none of the swearing, and it was only later that I saw it properly. But this was on, I think we've talked about it before. I had a relative who used to record films off Sky movies because we didn't have Sky movies, and then lend me a tape, and I'd have like 4 films on like double speed, 4 films on a video, and this was one of the films, and Lethal Weapon 2 as well. So I've probably seen Lethal Weapon 2 more than the first one, and I've probably seen this more. This was my kind of staple diet movie. But having said that, I'd forgotten most of it.
Okay.
So,
but the director this time is not the same director because on the first one it was John
McTiernan. So often a lot of the action movie polls will be like, which is the best film? And it always gets down to, is it Die Hard or is it Predator? And I think, well, John McTiernan's done well out of this poll because it's both directed by him, of course.
But this one is directed by Rennie Harlin. And looking at his IMDb page, this is one of the first films that he directed.
One of the first sort of American films. Yeah, he did. Nightmare on Elm Street 4 was the one before this, I think.
But I then looked at what he went on to do, and there are some kind of standouts for me. Things like The Long Kiss Goodnight, which is the Gina Davis and Samuel L. Jackson film that was only sort of a few years
Shane
later.
Black movie, yeah.
Yeah, so I really like that. I think he did. What else? He's done a lot of TV.
Yeah, more recently, I think he's one of these people that was a good name in the 90s and then kind of fell by the wayside, I think.
Yeah, but it was a bit. I wonder why they changed. Given maybe McTiernan didn't want to come back and do it. Maybe he was just too busy. I don't know.
I'm trying to think if he's done any sequels because I don't think he did the second Predator.
McTiernan, I don't think so.
I don't think so. He did. What's the Viking film we were talking about the other day? 13th Warrior.
Right. Yeah.
Warrior? Yeah, he did that.
Yeah.
I think, and then
he's done no sequels.
No.
And
then he's been in prison, so he hasn't done much since he's been in prison.
Oh, is that where he's been?
Yeah.
I
think it's for tax. I can't remember. I think it might be for tax.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't think he's like.
He hasn't directed anything since 2003.
Yeah, it's very difficult to. He might have done like the Christmas play for Cell Block 7 or something, but nothing that was released. Well, although some of them will have been released, I guess, after.
Anyway, so John McTiernan didn't return, but everyone else did. Bruce Willis, Bonnie Bedelia, William Atherton as Thornburg, and Reginald Vell Johnson as Al Powell.
And even on the writing side, Stephen D'Souza is back, who was one of the co-writers, but this time he's paired with Doug Richardson, who went on to write Bad Boys and also Money Train. I don't know if you've seen Money Train, Wesley Snipes and
yes, a long time ago. Time ago, yeah. So
it's a good writing team, and this is interesting.
Really good.
Because the first film is based on a novel. This is also based on a novel, but the two novels have nothing to. They haven't got the same characters in them. I guess
correct.
The novel's called 58 Minutes, and I'm assuming that they had 58 minutes until the planes would be coming down. Which is slightly shorter than this film, but I guess they've taken that premise. It's weird looking back at it now because Die Hard in A became like a subgenre, didn't it? Like on a train, on a plane, on a boat,
submarine,
on a bus, even.
Yep.
And but this was the first one. Well, the second one, obviously, but the first one that wasn't the main film. And what I think back at the time, I was like, oh, it's so annoying because this would never happen to the same guy. It would never happen to his wife. It's ridiculous. But actually, now I'm like, they cover that off really well here. They refer to it. And there's a reason for all the characters to be back. Bruce Willis is back because he's gone to Washington to wait for his wife's flight to come in. So that's the reason to be there. It's Christmas again, which is good because they're back together, but that kind of ties it together with the first movie. William Atherton has got a kind of reason to be there, and it's funny. And he rings Reginald VelJohnson's character to get information. So they bring back the key players, but in a really... It is implausible. It's an action movie. Within the realms of the world
the movies
created, and with the realm of this film, it's like in this situation I buy that John McClane is just very good at this kind of thing, and he's got these key people around him. So I think again I'm much more forgiving about that now than I was as younger, going, oh, this is ridiculous.
As a pretentious teenager.
Yeah.
Oh, Kevin.
This happened?
I'd forgotten a fair few bits of this as well. And looking back, it's 1990, and when it came out. We should mention some of the other actors in it.
There's a hell of a cast in this film. John
Amos, who, you'd probably think of him from things like Coming to America, a very comedic role. And that was 2 years before this. But he's really good in this as a senior kind of general and a colonel, I think, very senior officer. William Sadler, which we'll come on to. Of course, Dennis Franz, who is, a staple of NYPD Blue and all of that for years and years and years. I mean, did you watch NYPD Blue?
I didn't, but I knew him from that. And he is one of those people that's like, you were born to play a cop, and you should be a cop in everything that you do.
The other person I wanted to highlight, just because of who he's done more recently, is Vondi Curtis Hall. He played Miller, who was one of the William Sadler's men who fights, McClane fights him in the airport. And of course, more recently, we've seen him in Daredevil, the Netflix TV show, as Ben Urich. But that was 30 years ago. So I looked at him and going, why does he look familiar? And it took me forever to go, oh my God, okay, yes, I get it. Then he was, probably in his 20s or early 30s, and now he's a 60-year-old man. It makes perfect sense.
It does. It is like a parade of excellent character actors. Like every new scene, you're like, oh, they're either people that were really established then, or they're people that we know now. It's like John Leguizamo is in this for about 5 seconds.
Yes.
He's one of their henchmen who literally, I think, picks up a walkie-talkie. That's pretty much his only thing. But he's obviously gone on to be in loads of things. And it's interesting. I always get William Sadler and Robert Patrick mixed up.
And they're both in this.
But to the point that watching it, I was like, why is he there? Because they're going to sink him. Why is he showing himself? Everyone recognizes that guy. And I was like, oh, it's Robert Patrick. So, yeah. And there's no reason to get those two muddled up. They don't look that alike. But
Not really, no. I was wondering why.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. But he obviously went on. It's only 2 years later or a year later that he was in T2. Terminator film.
Yeah.
In a much bigger role than in this film.
Yeah, and he's done loads of stuff since then.
Who else is in it? Art Evans, Fred Thompson, Tom Bauer, Sheila McCarthy. It's and Franco Nero, who I knew from Enter the Ninja, which was one of my favourite films when I watched it far too young, really, to have watched it. But he was at Comic-Con I was at was going to say last year. I wasn't at a Comic-Con last year, 2020. I was nowhere.
Nope.
But in 2019 in London.
All right, yeah.
It was. I remember saying, Enter the Ninja, Die Hard 2. I'm like, Die Hard 2? What was he in Die Hard 2? But he's the general.
Yes, of course, the foreign general that they bring over.
That's flown in, yeah.
So did you remember much of the story? Because I remembered the overall story, but I'd forgotten bits. I remembered the thing with the church, and I remembered the twist and the...
I remembered it was at an airport.
Yep.
I remembered it was Christmas. I thought that they were targeting his wife, which is why I was like, oh, this is ridiculous. But so it was actually quite good to go, no, the first film, it's a place they were destined to be because it was a job. The second film, they just happened to be there, which I think made it better. I think had they made it, it would have been even more contrived, really.
Yeah. It wasn't about him at all. He was just wrong place, wrong time.
For the first 10 minutes, I thought it was in Dallas Airport, and I realized it was Dulles Airport in Washington when I saw it on someone's jacket.
Yeah. And you're like, why do they keep going about Washington? And what's wrong with them?
Yeah.
Dulles International Airport, which is, to us and our ear, is a very strange name. Dulles. It's the dullest airport ever.
It is, but it's in this film. It's quite exciting.
Lots going on, yeah.
I'd forgotten what else name of the actor now. The guy who's in Total Recall was also Joey's dad from Friends. He's in this very early on.
Yes.
Kind of annoying, wisecracking cop.
Mm-hmm.
And I quite like the fact that McClane is kind of a celebrity because he would be. What he did in the first film is a big thing. That would be a huge, even back then, pre-internet, pre-social media, it would still be a massive story due to newspapers and the television.
Yeah.
So the fact that, and I love the fact everyone's trying to push it. Like he had to prove himself in the first film because he's from out of town, and he's kind of got to do that again. I like the fact it wasn't just, oh, here's that guy. He's done this amazing thing. Let's listen to him.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten this one in a way is more of an ensemble piece, I think, because the first film is much him on his own with a couple of people helping him as time goes on.
Yeah.
I think with this, it's much more, well, actually, it's an airport. He can't do everything on his own.
No.
But he does occasionally. He's interesting. He's like, 1 minute he's trying to help. Next minute he does often does his own thing. Then he comes back and helps a bit. I'd forgotten that kind of stuff. It's very kind of, it's got that Western kind of thing of like this one man who can do everything. But he pulls it off, I think, largely due to charm. But I buy that John McClane in this world can do all this stuff, I think.
I also noticed, I know they talk about patterns and, it's Die Hard but there's certain things that he always does, which weirdly has a strange kind of link to other films where it's always a character that you least expect and you underestimate and people would not look at and even would just completely disregard. So in the first film, he's, working with a cop that people have kind of just ignored and put off and don't really do anything. And in this one, his key kind of go-to guy is a janitor who helps him with key information, helps him get about. In the second one, it's a guy who drives a taxi, who's just an ordinary Joe off the street who helps him. So it's that everyman thing. He's no longer the everyman. He was in the first one too.
Yeah.
And in this one, he's got this guy who says, right, go here, do this. This is how you get around. The third one, it's a taxi driver. I can't even remember the fourth one. I think that's one of the reasons it started to get completely out of control is it got less and less, even though we said it's fantastical, it's not realistic to a degree, it got more detached from reality. And I think it lost it.
And I think it's got its own thing. Like I'd never thought of it that way before, but now that you've said it, it is like a blue collar thing. It's like all the blue collar, he's a blue collar guy and all these other blue collar people help him. And the majority of the film, people like journalists, people like those in charge, the kind of office people are the ones who make mistakes or the ones who think they can do more than they can. It is kind of almost like a parable about being working class.
Yeah, even the smallest person can make a difference. It's The Hobbit all over again. Basically.
But I think
stole it from Tolkien. Yeah.
One of my notes here is that the strength of the incidental characters makes it like the original. I think in both these movies, the first and second film, I'm not sure about the ones after this, but the first two, everyone you meet is interesting, even if there's someone at a desk that he's trying to use the fax machine from, or
Yes.
Just facts. But every character is kind of interesting. There's no one that's just kind of by the numbers. They've all got a little bit of their own little story, which I think is really. I don't think it's something you get that much anymore.
They all get a moment. So, Barnes gets to do some cool stuff with going down to help him, and he kind of fights a bit. Even Trudeau, who to begin with, the kind of guy who looks after the air traffic control, is a bit of an arse to begin with. But then he says, no, I understand, and he helps him. And then when McClane's struggling, he comes over and talks to him. And they have a little kind of head-to-head. So there's this, and even the cop, played by Dennis Franz, who's such an arse to begin with, and he's saying, yeah, Mr. Big Shot, and blah-de-blah, and then he has a turn as well.
Yeah,
so
they've all got their own kind of arc. Really.
Yeah, it's really good. And you don't see that, but it's all about, it was all about McClane in the first one, more or less. And in this, they kind of opened it up to other people. And it works really well, even though, yes, he is a one-man army. But I like the fact that we get this from other people. He, without them, he couldn't have done this. He wouldn't have. Whereas in the first one, you could argue that it was all on him.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. But I think as well, by changing it from a tower block to an airport, it just makes it a bigger incident. There's far more people at risk.
Yes.
Occasionally, he makes the wrong decision, which, causes problems. So he has to lean on other people. There's stuff that he just doesn't know.
Yeah.
Which, I think it makes it all the stronger, actually, watching it again. What I think is clever, they've got enough connective tissue with the first one. It feels like a sequel. It feels very much in the same world. But it feels different enough that it doesn't just feel like the same story in a different place.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even Atherton, who's awful, and as you said, he makes things 100 times worse when he causes a panic in the airport that everyone's been trying to avoid, and he starts a stampede and they're breaking down the doors and people are running for their lives, and even he sort of has an arc. I love the fact that he's got a restraining order out against McClane's wife, and he can't go within 50 feet. And then the air stewardess, even they get an arc. The air stewardess is like, would you like some champagne? I love that. I absolutely love that.
It is. It's almost taken because a lot of the first film relies on his humor, and his lines, but they kind of broaden that out to everyone. I love the fact it's like actually his wife is quite sassy and quite funny in this, more so in the second movie. And you go,
yes,
I can buy that relationship much more in the second film.
Yes,
much more. And she wouldn't put up with his crap, and she would give him as good as she gets. And I think that it's.
Even the old woman who the old woman says, "Oh, I used to have mace. I don't anymore. Now I have this taser, and I zap them." And she goes, "I zapped my dog with it. He didn't walk right for a week."
I know. I love that. The old Chekhov's gun thing. You're like, that taser will be handy later. And of course,
and then even the old lady gets an arc at the end where she sees Atherton and goes, "Oh, honey, honey." She goes, "Asshole," and steps over him. So, even the old lady gets an arc. It's just next to the seat. It's little touch like in a normal film. They just trim that out in a modern film. They go, "Nah, trim it out, runtime, trim it out, get it down to 90 minutes." You're like, no.
And it's the weird thing, because I often look at the first film's screenplay as like the perfect example almost of structure and being really taut and getting the right things across. But it's like, now I realise they've done just as good a job, but with far more characters.
Yeah.
And it's not, this film is nowhere near as iconic as the first one.
No.
But it isn't just, you remember Bruce Willis stuff, you remember Alan Rickman stuff from the first one. But in this, there's like, watching it again, I'm like, you say, there's like maybe 20, 30 characters that have a moment that's really interesting or really funny, or they've got a good line, or there's a good action sequence. And it's, I'm very pleasantly surprised by how much this has held up, I have to say.
I came in thinking, all right, I know the film, I know what's going to happen, I know the rough lay of the land. And I did to a degree, but I'd forgotten moments. And when you're rewatching a film, there's that thing of, I know it. It's not that it's a chore, because it is a good film, but equally is that thing of, But I actually found that I was concentrating on the film for the whole time. I wasn't distracted. I wasn't looking away or pausing it to go and do something else. And it held my, focus the whole time. And I had the impression in my mind that it was a really long film. I was thinking it was like 2.5 hours. And when it got to the end, I was like, oh, wait, is that it? And it's like, so the runtime, let's have a look. It's Just over 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours and 4 minutes. That's it.
But quite a taut 2 hours, 4 minutes. Really, an awful lot happens in this film.
There's not a lot of fat. That's the point. Short of trimming out character moments, which I think would have made the film not as interesting, you couldn't really have taken out too much more.
No, I agree. It's interesting. I watched it with my wife, who's never seen it before. I didn't realise. She was like 10 minutes into it. I've not seen this film before, mate. You must have.
Has you seen the first one?
You've seen the first one?
Right.
Multiple times. We've definitely seen the third one together. I think we went to the cinema to see that.
Okay.
If I'd known she hadn't seen the second one, that would have been rearranged. I've seen the fourth one, but I don't think she has. I haven't seen the fifth one. But I also, she was like, that was really good. That was really, and she was like edge of a seat. Really, it's good watching it with someone who's never seen it. Cause she was like, like the kind of bait and switch bit later with the army, guys, I was thinking, I can see this coming. I'm thinking, well, I've seen it 5 times before, so of course I can see it coming. But I think it was interesting to watch it with somebody else who was like, oh no, it's why they got the blue bits on the gun, not the red bit. Oh, it's
yeah.
But that is also, though, is that McClane doesn't just get respected because of his mouth gets him a long way, doesn't it, in both movies?
Yeah.
But here he has to literally show, look at this. This is what's happened. This is what they're doing. He has to really kind of almost pummel people into the point where they actually are listening to it, really. And like you say, they all get this up. They all have this different moment where they go, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. And then they suddenly flip because it's such a pressure environment. Because it's only 2 hours they've got, isn't it?
Yeah.
The planes are going to start dropping from the sky. They have to start listening to him and start helping him. And I love that. And I think I'd forgotten the impact of that plane coming down when they bring the first plane down.
Yeah.
Even though I knew it was going to happen, even though I've seen it before, it still hit me with and that's very for this kind of film. Usually, like, oh yeah, there's lots of people going to die in this building, but it's all very. But I think because it was a plane full of civilians that was at random, that could have been anybody.
Yep.
Well, it was they were from Britain. There was a British rail joke in there, and Colmini in the
as the pilot, yeah. But they set it up as well really well because you have the air steward talking to like an old lady and someone else going, "Oh, I've arranged your flight to be able to connect to so and so," and the woman's like, "Oh, thank you." So you're meeting these little characters. They've all got a tiny little moment. I'm thinking, "Oh, all right," and then when they die, you're like, oh no, what just happened? And in another film, what they would have done was just saying, right, crash the plane, and you don't see anybody in the plane. You just see the plane go down, and then you don't care about them. You go, oh, 300 people dead.
And then it would just feel like, it would feel like the end of Man of Steel or something, just like all these big collateral damage. You wouldn't really think about it, but I say, because the whole film is based around everyone is interesting, everyone's got a story.
Yep.
It's a very people-based film. Like you say, you get this little insight into their lives, and then they're dead. And again, I've seen it lots of times before, but it still made me kind of go, and then puts you in McClane's shoes because he's like, well, this is my fault. He can't stop everything, which is a good thing. He's not superhuman. He literally has got his limits.
Because Trudeau has that moment where he tried his best to go out there with the flaming sticks to ward the plane off, and it didn't work. It wouldn't work, and they didn't kind of change that, so they saw him suddenly and go, oh yes, I'll pull up, because a man stood on there with sticks in the middle of the snow, and it's like, no, they wouldn't be able to see him, and they all died. And then Trudeau talks to him and says, you tried, I understand, you tried really well, but we'll just have to do better. But he says at the beginning, they said to him, is this what you expect? And he goes, no, this is just the beginning, it's going to get worse. And of course it does. It gets much, much worse as it goes on.
And we talk a lot about rising tension, but like this film is like rising tension, masterclass, really, because I guess the difference is the first film, it's the building, it's him, here it's like, well, anything could happen, and they are in control. The terrorists really are in control because they've planned it, they're military, they know what they're doing, and then you watch it over time, it just starts to sort of chip away at their plan, but it's very late in the day that it actually turns to being something that McClane and everyone else can do something about. Really, it's still. I find it a really tense watch, which again, for a film I've watched multiple times, that's really surprising.
I like the fact that when Colonel Grant comes in, he knows who McClane is, and a lot of the other ones do, but he overrides like the local Dennis Franz local airport police chief. Like he says to him, this guy took down Nakatomi Plaza and stuff. So if he says something, you listen. And they're like, well, I'm in charge. He's like, yeah, but this guy's been there. And it's like he's treating McClane like a fellow soldier, not just because he's a cop. It's like, he's been there. He's done this. I trust him and believe him, which warms you to the colonel. Yeah. You're like, oh, and he says, McClane, you're with me. And he's like, oh, all right. And you think, and he even says to him, he goes, oh, I thought you were an asshole. He goes, yeah, but I'm your kind of asshole. And you're like, he's nice, isn't he? And then later on, which makes the betrayal that much worse. I mean, it's just, as you say, it's a masterclass in of misdirection. They show you this one thing, they make you lead down the path thinking this guy's awful, and then they turn it again, you go, all right, and then they flip it again, you're like, okay, all right. And when he kills that young lad who wasn't with them, it's a throwaway line early on. He goes, oh yeah, so-and-so had appendicitis, that's why I'm here, I'm very new, and he's talking to McClane. It's not even it's the same character, but talking to McClane, and then later on, they bring it full circle when he says, I wish you'd been with us, and you're all going, yeah, I wish you'd been with him, and you're like, why? And then, and that's the end of that kid. And you're like, wow, harsh, really harsh. I'd forgotten that.
It's that thing. Everything is set up and payoff. Every moment in this film, every line someone says is taking you somewhere. Yeah. Which again, some people struggle to do that at all in a film, but to do that with every character and virtually every scene. Yeah. Stupid young me who didn't appreciate all these things, just thought, yeah, that was quite good. Now I'm just like, this is really, really well made. Yeah. And for a second film in a franchise, which is a difficult second album, isn't it? You've got to follow up a massive hit that everyone loves. You've got to get it just right. You've got to get it similar enough, but different enough. And that's a very hard line to tread. But the work, you can see the work here is really paid off.
So I was thinking about this and thinking about, Steven Souza worked on both, on these first two films. And I thought, it's all him. But when you start to look down his back catalogue and you realise it can't have all been him. We know that the first film was a complete mess in terms of 100 things could have gone wrong, and they did, and they had to kind of make that film on the fly almost in a way and kind of patch the hole. And they created this Frankenstein thing which shouldn't have worked, and yet it was a massive hit. But you start to look down his list of things since then. So he did another 48 Hours. He did Hudson Hawk, which was terrible.
I see. I like Hudson Hawk. I'll defend Hudson Hawk.
Okay. He did Ricochet. It's all right. He did. Then he goes on to things like The Flintstones, Beverly Hills Cop 3, Street Fighter, Judge Dredd, the bad one with Stallone. And then after that, Lara Croft and things. And so I'm not saying he's a bad writer. He isn't. He's proven that he's done some amazing things with Die Hard and Die Hard 2. But it can't all be him all the time because the quality isn't there. So I think Doug Richardson. Now, if you look down his filmography, he's done far less, but he's done Die Hard 2, Bad Boys, which launched a franchise that started in 1995 that's still going now, 25 years later. And what did he do? Hostage in 2005. So that's another Bruce Willis
Willis, I've seen that.
He's done far less, but I think it's a combination. I think just having the one person by himself, you can't say it was all D'Souza because it blatantly wasn't. And they had other people working on that first film as well.
Yeah, Jeb Stewart. Was it Jeb Stewart on the first one, I think?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's something in the chemistry of the different people working together raised the bar, because this one, in terms of character development and changing the story, they knew that they couldn't just do the same formula as last time. They knew they couldn't just go, this time stick him in an airport and he kills everyone and everything's fine. And because there's a moment where, again, the colonel says, or someone else, no, it's Dennis Franz, and he says, I've killed 2 guys here and I've killed off this one. He goes, yeah, but there might be 40 of them. So you killing 4 guys doesn't make any difference. And you go, oh, yeah. Whereas in the first film, it's all, there's 16 terrorists or whatever it is, and I've killed 6 of them. You're like, wow, now he's down to 10 guys.
And I think that, I hadn't really thought about it until we're talking about it now, but maybe that's part, it's like the stakes are bigger, there's more people, less. And it doesn't teach him humility. He's John McClane. He's Bruce Willis, but he's John McClane, so he's not going to have any humility. But there is a little bit of, there's a couple of moments where you can see he's thinking, I have to listen to this because I can't. Well, the biggest thing for me, the biggest lesson he learns in this is he can't do it on his own. He isn't a one-man army, despite the fact that that's his reputation, really.
Yeah, it's it was a very different kind of a film in some ways, despite the fact that it's him against a group of terrorists. But they're as smart as the first lot. Not as smart as Alan Rickman, obviously, or Theo. But I always wanted at some point in another Die Hard, they haven't done it. I wanted that Hannibal Lecter Silence of the Lambs thing where in the fourth one, I think it is, where they're doing the IT stuff, isn't it? The fourth one?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
where they're trying to...
4.0.
Yeah, God. Yeah. Where they're trying to do stuff and, it's really high tech and all the rest of it. I wanted them to go, for McClane to go, yeah, I know a guy. And they go to Theo's cell and he's just there in a room with no computers. And they're like, can you help us? Maybe, for the price. Tell me about your childhood. Something just where, because he's so good at what he did that he could crack, anything. But they never brought Theo back, sadly. Because he's the only one. He's the only terrorist that survived. Everyone else was killed, thrown off a building, shot, burned, or blown up. He's the only one because Argyle punches him in the neck and knocks him out.
That's right. Yeah.
In the ambulance. But if they ever do another Die Hard, hopefully they won't.
Have a word with somebody.
I hope they don't, to be honest. But anyway, moving on. Shall we talk about William Sadler?
Yes. And his bottom.
And his bottom.
Why have I forgotten that? 6 times or whatever watching it, and it's like, and each time I'm like, oh, okay. Is it naked Tai Chi Tuesday?
So we should talk about what we know about the extra stuff, because Pete and I have both read a book called Born to be Bad.
This is true.
In which the interviewer, Timon Singh, goes and Tai talks to a number of different actors who played villains over the years in films, and he interviewed them. And in Born to be Bad, he interviewed William Sadler. And he talked to him about this. And I think they were like 5 days into filming this thing when the director or someone came to him and said, so in this scene, you're going to be doing naked Tai Chi. And Bill Sadler was like, I beg your pardon? You mean naked Tai Chi?
He's like, can't Robert Patrick do it?
Yeah. Not the same person, Pete. But what Bill Sadler said was, okay, but can we film that at the end? And they went, okay. So then he worked out like every day. He was going to the gym and eating and working out and putting on muscle and toning up. And then they shot that the very last thing, because he'd been working out for the whole shoot of the film. So when it got to that moment and he's completely butt naked doing Tai Chi, he's ripped suddenly. Whereas at the start of shooting, he wasn't. But we only know that because we read the book and Bill told the story.
This is true.
But yes, I don't know why he had his bottom out and why it had to be naked Tai Chi.
No, it's a very Van Damme kind of move. Here's my bum for no reason.
There's no valid story point for that. Most of the film, as we said, it hangs together. You can understand it. This, I was like,
I'm not even sure what on earth that would be foreshadowing, really, unless it ended like the start of Red Heat, and fighting naked in the snow. I don't know.
Very small towel. That's it.
I did like the fact that Colonel Stewart was well known. So because he saw him, didn't he? McClane sees him.
Sees him in the airport. He can't remember who he is, and he goes, "Sorry about that." He bangs into him at the phone booths.
And actually, how he finds out who it is another brilliant piece of writing, because the other reporter in the film, didn't he say "fuck you" to her when she asked him questions?
She asked him for an interview early on, and he goes, and his 2 words for you, "fuck you." She's like, "Oh, thanks."
And so about 10 minutes later, she sees McClane and goes, "Oh, John McClane, Plaza. Oh, can I have a few words?" And she goes, "Fuck you." And he goes, "Oh, that's exactly what Colonel Stewart said to me." And I paused it and I was like, very good writing. Because it's that old thing, exposition. How do you get him to know who it is without him recognizing him?
Yeah.
And just, in a way, that's the only purpose for that reporter. Because I thought, it's going to be 2 reporters, one in the air, one on the ground. But she doesn't do much else in it, really. But it's a genius moment of like, literally, if he hadn't said "fuck you," he'd never have known who the guy was, so that later they can work out that he's the guy leading the mercenaries.
But she saves the day later on, though, because
you're right. You are right.
Dennis Franz crashes the car into the cab, and the cavalry was going to go with them, and then suddenly they can't. So he goes, "Oh, I'll give you an interview," and she goes, "Oh, I'll have your baby if you give me this." And he goes, "Just the ride."
Yeah, it's like earlier.
Who've thrown themselves at him.
Just the facts, please.
Yeah, that's the other one. The lady at the desk. He goes, "I got off work in half an hour," and he's like, married. She's like, just the fact. But yes, so she gets him in the helicopter to fly over the wing. So that's her other important
I said
thing.
a lie. I just said she doesn't do very much. That is completely wrong.
But she gets to film it, so she gets a great shot. She gets a great story. And the guy goes, yeah, I'm a wild man. He goes, get down in front of it. He goes, I'm not putting a helicopter in front of a plane. And he's like, well, okay, over the wing. Yes, I can do that. I'm not going to play chicken with a plane in a helicopter. It would just be, oh, they got away. McClane's dead. That's the end of the film then. Oh, well, a different ending that we never saw coming. And that ended the Die Hard franchise. Yeah. But yeah, so she does they both had good moments. And I loved, even though he's awful, even though the character he plays, William Atherton as Thornburg, he's so good as playing slimy, sleazy arseholes. He did it in 2 Die Hards. He did it in Ghostbusters. He's so good. Now again, he's also been interviewed in this book. So we'll put a link down below if you haven't seen it already to Born to Be Bad. But yes, they talked to him about, he had a spate, a kind of run of playing these kind of arsehole characters for this period. And it was great. Late 80s, early 90s. So what else do you want to talk about? Or are you ready to start giving it some scores? What do you have in your notes, Pete?
I just got lots of things that happened, which is not that interesting, really. Again, she tases him on the plane. But I said before, it's like everything is set up and teed up. Even things like the fact he says no and waves his wedding ring is a nice way of us knowing that they're back together, because you didn't necessarily know for certain if they would get back together at the end of it.
No.
So, I try to remember what happens with his wife. So I don't remember his wife being in any of the other films. So I don't know if they...
I don't think she is. I don't think she's in the 3rd one. And then in the 4th one, it's his daughter. And then the 5th one, which I haven't seen, it's his son.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
So she's not in it. They mention her in passing with the children. But I don't think there's a connection to the 1st one in the 3rd one, which we won't spoil.
No, but yes.
But that's got nothing to do with his wife, as far as I know.
No.
But yes, so she's only in the first 2. Bonnie Bedalia playing Mrs. McClane.
I think the only bit that made me go really on 6th viewing was the ejector seat bit.
Also, how long does it take for a grenade to go off, Pete?
I don't know. I've never pulled a grenade.
Well, having also not ever pulled a grenade, I can tell you that if you have about a dozen grenades and you throw them and you constantly roll them in there, nah, he didn't have. But it's a film, Pete. We'll let it go.
I can't believe it. I thought we were watching documentaries for the last 9 years, and now you tell me.
Uh-oh. It all comes crashing down. It's a fun, thick connection, though, just because I mentioned McClane and Bonnie Bedalia. Do you watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
I don't, but my daughter has watched the entire series of Brooklyn Nine-Nine 4 times.
Excellent.
She'll know.
Well, you can talk to her about this before. The main character, Jake, is obsessed with Die Hard. It's his favourite film ever.
Yes, she wanted to watch it at Christmas because of that, and then got 10 minutes in and went, everyone's going to be killed. I don't want to watch it anymore.
Fair enough. So he loves Die Hard so much to the point where he gets his girlfriend to dress up as Mrs. McClane during their naughty time in the show. And at one point, Reginald Van Johnson is in an episode of it, like a birthday treat. He gets to have, his girlfriend buys him lunch with Reginald Van Johnson. And he's like, can I call you Al Powell? No. Oh, okay.
That's also reminded me, because she's also been watching, she watched the whole of How I Met Your Mother in the first 15 days of January.
Wow.
Yeah, that's impressive. While still doing the schoolwork. But she was like, Dad. I'm like, what watch it? Johnny from Cobra Kai's in it, playing himself.
Yes.
He's playing William Zabka. And I'm like, so it's funny to these, another generation getting the same pop culture references as us now because of the wonders of nostalgia being really successful.
Yeah, and the fact that streaming things have everything on that goes around and goes around and just comes back.
That is also true.
Yeah. All right. Let's give it some scores.
Okay.
Enough with the yakety yak. What is your score?
Do you want to go first or shall I?
I don't mind, Stephen.
Okay, you go first, Peter.
All right, thank you. Really appreciate that. So we've talked about this, and we can tell that we both liked it. So it isn't as iconic as the first film, but I think in a way that makes it a better rewatch, because the first film, you know it so well and you know the lines so, off pat. It almost has gone into that kind of pop culture area where you forget about it, be it the strength of it being as a film itself.
Mm.
But I think here the stakes are higher. It reminds you that Bruce Willis was at this point like the perfect action lead. He's kind of got charisma, he's got the one-liners, but he's also a believable kind of everyman, as opposed to kind of being like huge and ripped. The stakes are really high. Said the ensemble cast is really good. It's very hard to make a sequel to a ridiculously successful film, but here they do it. And I think the only way you can't just compare it to the first film. You've got to compare it to all the other Die Hard clones.
Yeah.
And to me, this stands head and shoulders above them. So it isn't as iconic as the first one, but it's just as consistent. And I'm going to give it 5 bags of action.
Oh, well, fair enough. So I'd forgotten little bits and pieces. It held my interest more than I was expecting it to, because it was a repeat watch of a film I've seen probably 7 times, 8 times or something over the years. I laughed at the jokes because I'd forgotten them. I'd forgotten some of the characters, the side characters and the kind of little character arcs that they had. And I appreciated that as well a lot more. Still baffled about the naked Tai Chi, but nobody can explain it. Even the actors can't involved in the show. I liked that he wasn't doing it completely by himself, and he had to work with other people and rely on other people. And that sometimes he failed. Sometimes things went wrong. The plane crashed and people died initially, and all this sort of stuff. It was really, really uncomfortable to watch at times, because you felt for him and you felt for all the other planes out there. And I like that his wife had a bit more to do in this one. She was a bit sassy and gave him a lot of back chat to other people. Nothing that I can fault. There's things that haven't aged as well. But as you said, compared to other action films that came after it, that copied it and just tried to use the same formula, they didn't have the same writing. They didn't have the same leading man, because as problematic as some of Willis's films later were, at this point, he was very charismatic. He's very good at what he did. He wasn't too big for his boots. It all seemed to work and fit together. And he was believable and 100% committed to the role. He was completely in it. And some of his later films, you're just like, he's just phoning in, doesn't care. In this, absolutely committed, and you can't fault his performance. It's really, really good and heartfelt. So I really enjoyed it as well. So I'm also going to give it 5 out of 5 bags.
Wow.
Full house.
It's one of the most positive episodes in quite some time.
Yeah. Really good. Really enjoyed it. And I actually think the third one's okay. I think the third one's not as good as 1, 2, which we're going to do next month.
Yes, we're going to do the third one next month.
I think from what I remember, but it's been quite a while actually since I've seen 3, more so than 2.
I think I've only seen it once.
Okay, that's good. That's good then.
Again since, so I've probably forgotten everything about it apart from Samuel Jackson and Jeremy Irons.
Yeah. So 3 will be interesting to talk about. 4, and then 5 we'll get to.
5 will be interesting because neither of us have seen it, so it'll be a completely new experience, like a birthday.
I think the numbers are going to tick down, because we gave Die Hard 1. I think we both gave it 5 stars. Yeah. 5 bags. Sorry, not stars.
Steven.
5 bags. I said bags. We gave this one 5 bags. I think the next one, and my prediction is 3 from me and 4 from you.
Oh gosh, okay.
And the next one after that will be like 2 from me, 3 from you, and then the last one probably like 1 and 2. I just think the numbers are going to properly tick down.
I love the fact that the only part of my entire existence on this planet where I'm seen as the positive one is this podcast. Because I give 1 more bag than you.
Yours is nostalgia. Mine's just, critical cutthroat straight down the line. So, have you seen Die Hard 2? If so, what do you think? Get in touch. Let us know. Email us. Come on to the Facebook group. If you've got any of the action news for films, upcoming things, post them on a Facebook group and talk to us and the other members there. We're always happy to hear from us, from you, you know us. And we also post news, so you're obviously happy to hear from us. Don't forget to join our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Like and subscribe. And
hit that notification bell so you never miss our world-class action movie content.
Yes, and don't forget to check out some of the episodes on there and interviews. We have interviews with people like Michael Ironside. Yes, that Michael Ironside. You are welcome, everybody. Go and
Someone
watch
didn't
it.
believe
and
me.
enjoy it.
Someone I know in person said that wasn't really Michael Ironside. So why would I get someone to pretend to be Michael Ironside, like to earn the mega bucks that we get from doing a podcast? That's
Yes,
why.
the 30th anniversary of Total Recall. It was the Michael Ironside.
It was, and we
the legend.
Spoke to Gavin Rothery, writer director of Archive, who also worked on Moon. So we've got
some good stuff. Got some good stuff. Yeah. Anyway, that's it for this episode. We'll be back next month to talk about Die Hard 3. Pete, do you want to wrap us up? Thank you very much for listening and or watching, if indeed you still are or were. I tried to be really clever then and end up being very stupid, which again is pretty typical. Maybe. Good night. Good night.
You have been listening to Bags of Action. No bullshit. You'd better stick around for the next episode, because if you're lying, I'll be back.